I'm here with Lori. Lori, you are a Jubilee All-Star. You've been in many, many videos, but welcome to the Surrounded follow-up.
I'm so excited to be here with you. And the one thing I will say about the Jubilee team, you are the ultimate professionals. You are kind. You are wonderful to work with. And I honestly am honored every time I'm asked to be on an episode.
Oh, well, that's so nice. You know how to butter us up.
No, but it's true. It's true.
Oh,
I've been on other podcasts and stuff where things are a little bit more hectic, but your show treats everybody with respect. And I think that that's very, very valuable.
well, thank you. I mean, that's certainly the goal. I mean, I've seen you in so many episodes, so it would be hard to kind of go down the list, but this was probably one of the more contentious ones, at least just because Dean, he has a firm style of debate. The differences between his opinions and you and the other women was significant. And so it was interesting to see you guys go head to head. Is that how you experienced it?
Well, for me, this is the second time Dean and I have faced off.
Hmm.
And the thing about Dean is he's an intelligent kid. You can't say that he's not. He is really good at memorizing the stats that he wants to. But I think what is lacking is life experience. I mean, he's 21 years old, and really his background is he's a social media influencer. So he hasn't really had a chance to see the life that we have. If you even go back to when President Trump was first elected, Dean was 11 years old.
Hmm.
So think about that. He gets a lot from his side of the aisle, but I don't think he's always completely an honest debater. And there was a part of the episode, and I just couldn't help myself because he would spew out what he did, but then he'd look at the camera and he'd make faces and
He was doing the camera
he
nods.
played the camera. And so at one point I was so like, this is stupid. I very harshly exaggerated what he was doing. I don't know if it'll be in the episode, but I think that if it came down to it and I actually sat down and found out who he was as a person and why
Hmm.
he takes the views that he does, we might find a little middle ground. But I think with Dean, he's always trying to win instead of having a conversation to see what we could agree on.
Yeah. I mean, I think he is kind of a new part of a new cohort in his generation that is sort of aggressive liberal debate bros.
Right.
Although I would argue that that genre of media was probably perfected by the conservative movement over the last decade. I think if we just think of Charlie Kirk as sort of the figurehead of that movement, or Steven Crowder, I kind of see it as something that conservatives did really well, showing up to college campuses, making people look kind of stupid and, going for those viral digs. Dean is sort of carrying on that tradition a little bit.
At the same time, I was friends with Charlie. One of the last times I ever saw Charlie was I was leaving an episode of Surrounded with Dean, and Charlie was coming in to film his episode, which is why the next time I did Surrounded, I got really choked up. Charlie had a firm conviction of what he regarded as truth. And what we saw happening in a lot of the universities and even the high schools was a definite left wing push on our kids, where if you tried to argue a conservative point of view, you would be downgraded a lot of the times. I
Hmm.
can tell you from my life, I was a complete professional woman. And I found out my son, who's now going into the Secret Service, was taught about sex toys in school. As a parent, I had a problem with that. And Charlie kind of stood for what he believed in. He was always respectful to people, and he always took the disagreeers to the front of the line. He wanted to hear them out. But I don't think I ever heard Charlie be completely disrespectful to someone or tear them down. Yeah, at times he would maybe or say something, but I think all in all, Charlie stood firmly in his Christian faith and he fought for what he believed in instead of kind of this mob rule that wanted to get to the front of the line so they could prove that he was right and they were wrong. I think
Hmm.
Charlie had a respect for everybody because he believed where conversation ends, violence would begin. And
Hmm.
look what happened.
Yeah, and those words from him obviously ring truer now than ever. And I
Correct.
agree with you. The line between provocation and confrontation and disrespect is a little fuzzy. And if you go back through the majority of Charlie Kirk's career, he was definitely interested in persuasion, and that was his goal, not so much humiliation. And there were certainly a lot of clips that were completely misrepresenting him that circulated to kind of characterize him as more malicious, I think, than he was.
You.
He certainly said some spicy things. I think like the one that sticks out to me the most was maybe, I can't remember. He said something Joe Biden did was treasonous or something like that. And so I can't defend everything he said. I think he crossed the line, but I agree with you. That wasn't something he was always doing.
For instance, the trans issue, I remember there was a student that asked him, "Why do you hate trans people?" And he said, "How can I hate that which I love?" And I don't think in his heart of hearts, he had ill intent toward anybody. He wanted the best for people in his way that he thought would be best for mankind and other people's lives. I think
Mhm.
that him being a Christian, him seeing sin in people's lives, and let's face it, we all fall short. He wanted to bring people to a place where they had faith and looked at things that were beautiful in life. And I think he really wanted to cut through the dissension and the division. And I think he did a good job at that. I think what is so harmful is the rhetoric. When you go around and you call conservatives Nazis or white supremacists, you're basically making them unhuman. When we all, I think, left or right, can find common goals in what we want for our families, but how we get there may be two different ways. We're all human beings and
Mhm.
we all should have the same rights as everybody else. When you start putting people into boxes, whether it be race or sexual orientation, that creates division.
Mhm.
So if we could get back to the middle where we just respect each other and let everybody live our lives the way we want to without saying, you need to believe the way I do, or you're a bad person, I think we'd get a lot further.
Yeah. Well, and I spoke to Julia Kate, and she really opened up about how her faith really informs her stance on
Hmm.
a lot of these issues. And I think you said you are a Christian.
Yes.
Um, but there is, and I brought up Michael Knowles because he said, he has pretty extreme views, I would say, on LGBTQ issues, not just transgender people, but also I think he's part of a movement to overthrow the marriage equality decision. And so he's not in favor of gay people being able to marry. But then I hear you saying my favorite movie is The
I love
Birdcage.
that movie. I love
And
it. Fairy
yeah,
dust, fairy dust, fairy dust.
and so, I think when people watch our shows and see your appearances, they probably lump you into this like very far right conservative group. But then when you and I talk, I hear different views coming out. Do you worry about that faction of the right? This maybe more Christian nationalist vein of conservatism that wants to really police sexuality of adults and remove marriage equality. Do you worry about that?
I really don't, and I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
I think that, first of all, it's pretty laid in stone. For me as a Christian, I can only speak for myself. I don't believe that one person is more righteous than another. I don't believe that. I just think we all have individual paths. Now, am I worried about them? No, I'm not. Because just like we were talking about with the far extreme left wanting to give kids sex changes, I think that they're trying to put forward a moral compass, but to enforce that on somebody, it's not real. People need to live their lives from their hearts, from their minds. I don't think that gay marriage is at risk. I really don't. I mean, I have a lot of friends in the log cabin Republicans, which are the gay Republicans, great guys, throw the best parties at the convention. And, my son, who's going to be a Secret Service agent, is gay.
Mhm.
And, for me, I just want him to find love and fulfillment in his life. For instance, if you want to say, well, it's sexually immoral, well, it's no more sexually immoral than me being a single woman being promiscuous. I mean, in reality, I just don't think it's right for us to enforce our beliefs on somebody. I'm a Christian and I love our country. So if that makes me a Christian nationalist, great. But I do not believe that anybody should enforce their will on anybody. They have their own journey. They have their own path with God. God's going to meet them where they're at.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you. I think a lot of people who are center and left obviously would agree with you on that. We want your son to be who he is. And if he wants to be married and have kids, I think that it's a very healthy path. So yeah,
Don't be a
but
hoe.
don't be a, but one thing I hear, yeah, and I think there's an argument to be made that too much promiscuity is not good for your health,
Well, it just
mentally or
leads to
physically.
emptiness and
Hmm.
people feeling that they're not worth anything.
Yeah. But then from what I hear from you, that doesn't sound like Christian nationalism at all. And so, there is this kind of interesting symmetry that you're pointing out, these kind of radical views on giving minors surgeries or drugs if they think that they're born in the wrong sex. That's kind of a radical view on the left, and we sort of paint people on the left maybe too broadly with those views. But then on the other side, there are these prevalent public figures who are Christian nationalists, and what I mean by that is like they want a government that operates more theocratically. They want to see the average Christian view of marriage reflected in law, prohibiting people like your son from getting married. And maybe we over-index how many conservatives actually believe that, because I think a lot of our viewers probably would think that you believe that because you get sort of lumped in with that side. There's this interesting parallel.
I've argued it heatedly on the show before and on other shows, but you don't get the time to really see where you're coming from. It's usually like, blah, everybody's talking at each other and then the bell rings. So somebody doesn't really get to know what you really feel and why. And then as far as, I think you and I have to be honest with ourselves too. A lot of these people, Dean, Michael Knowles, both make a living on their perspective. So therefore, if they need to stand strong in their stances, number one, because that's how they get their clicks and how they make money. I truly believe that when Charlie died, I think Dean was really sad. And the pushback he got from his followers, oh,
That
how
was surprising.
dare you support this guy? He's a racist. They made Charlie unhuman. And that's the dangerous thing, is when you start dehumanizing people to the point people try to kill them. And maybe Dean doesn't feel that extreme about things, but he had to cave to his mob followers. But the thing that scares me is there an unbalanced person in that following rank that is going to hear rhetoric, dehumanize somebody on the other side and do something violent. And I think it's something we need to be really careful with. Our rhetoric really needs to change.
Yeah, I agree with that. But do you think rhetoric is, I guess I agree that rhetoric can be unhelpful and can be a catalyst for violence. However, I think violent actions kind of stand alone. Like, I don't think you can directly blame words for causing violence. But when you say we need to dial in the rhetoric, are you also feeling that same critique towards the president? I mean, his rhetoric is rather extreme. I mean, if we just think about like his tweet on Easter morning.
This is the thing about Trump. I worked on his campaign. I actually have a picture of me and him together. You meet him and he's such a nice guy. Bill Maher talks about this. He's not.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say that.
Sometimes Trump will say things and you'll be like, what are you doing? Because there's going to be pushback. But I think that when I look at his actions on things that he's doing, I think there's a bigger picture that people are not seeing. I think that a lot of things that he has said have been taken out of context, like the fine people on both sides argument.
I agree. That was misrepresented.
But they still misrepresent it to this day.
Right.
Russiagate. Calling this man the minute he came down the escalator a Russian asset, when now we know Hillary Clinton paid for it and all the information of the dossier was made up in a bar over beers in the UK, according to Subsource One. When you paint somebody as the enemy of the country, and you tell people he's a Nazi, he's an authoritative person, you're not going to have rights. There's no rights anybody has lost under Trump that they didn't have before. That's what I'm talking about, extreme rhetoric. And you can say that about Trump, but a lot of things that Trump says and does is honestly to troll people. I think he gets reactions out of people.
My question to you, though, is are you giving him more lenience than your political opponents? Because, you know, Trump is he famously called the media, you know, the enemy of the people. I mean, he really is the most powerful man in the world, certainly in the country right now. And I mean, he has a very, very long list of wild things that he said into a mic. You could really make an argument that our culture is born out of that. And so this really divisive culture that we have is sort of born out of the lines that he crossed as that central figure.
Was he the one that crossed it first, though, is what I have to ask you. When you've got every TV station reporting 98% negative news against him, they are not being honest with the people. When they spent 3 years telling us he was a Russian agent, they were not being honest with people. And I think when Trump came down and he was put into office the first time, he wanted to fix things. And what he found was an FBI, a CIA, previous administration, and you can say, oh, J6, they literally designed a narrative around him to overthrow his presidency. Mm-hmm. So when he says...
we're still talking about the Russian dossier, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that lasted 3 years. 3 years, and there's still people to this day that believe it.
Right, and I mean, that's not unique, though. I mean, Clinton was impeached for an affair that he had with an intern. I mean, that was pretty big news for my childhood.
They said that President Trump committed treason. They were trying to overthrow his presidency.
The Mueller report acquitted him, though. You know, like the official kind of like government document, the Mueller report, right. It found that there was no credible claim that Trump, you know, was a compromised candidate. There were connections to Russia in unique ways, and like Paul Manafort was one of them, but there was no what was the collusion? There was no collusion. So
there wasn't any collusion. The whole thing was a lie. Hillary Clinton paid for it through fusion.
But isn't that the system Isn't that the system working in his favor and defending him? I guess I'm just not sure. How does that justify then, like, January 6th?
Okay, so January 6th is a completely different subject. Mm-hmm. I think that there were violent people on January 6th. I think that they should be held to account. But there's other clips, like there was a woman who, again, faced jail that got, you know, when you're at a concert and you got all these people pushing you?
Yeah, it's terrifying.
She got sucked into the crowd. A lot of people was carried toward that tunnel where she was just beat beyond recognition. You could literally see in the video where she is sucked into the crowd. I just think collectively we can't just say, oh, they tried to overthrow the government. In all honesty,
but there were people who, I don't think they, as in the whole, but I mean...
collective group. You're talking 1 million people. If they wanted to overthrow the government, they would have been armed and it would have fallen.
Thank you for going this far in with me, because I'm really enjoying this. The only thing I want to say, though, is I mean, Lori, when you look back on January 6th, do you not see it as sort of this grassroots effort to contest the certification of that election, like through force?
Well, that's the thing. All elections they contest. When Trump was first elected, there was debate on the floor. I wanted to see the debate on the floor.
I know. But Lori, I'm just saying, like, characteristically, like materially, characteristically, optically, it's one thing. And we saw this, like, when I was a kid, like, there was disagreement about the outcome of the Bush versus Gore election. Yeah. And it was totally valid. But the courts made a decision that could be argued either way, and then everybody stood by that. And there was no, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no significant incident anywhere close to what happened on January 6th. And so I'm just saying January 6th is unique in its own way when you look at it, where it's like, this is a group of people who are, through force, trying to interfere with the certification of this election.
When it happened, my jaw dropped and I'm like, no, because I knew it would stop the debate on the floor, and that's what I wanted to see. However, I do think that we do know now there was a lot of FBI agents in the crowd. There should have been a lot more preventative measures.
Right.
I do think we had a lot of problems with that election, and I do think that there were a lot of people there that truly thought their country was being stolen. I don't condone violence from anybody. I don't think that anybody has the right to injure or hurt anybody else. Unfortunately, we live in a fallen world and stupid people do stupid things. I think on January 6th, there were people that got caught up in it. I do think on January 6th that the narrative did so much for the left that they want to keep replaying certain things that push that everybody was violent. But the fact of the matter is, not everybody was. And those people
and I
that
would agree with that.
Were collectively prosecuted with those that were. We all have the right to a defense. And when they withhold Brady evidence from a trial, you don't have a fair trial. So those processes in those courts, knowing that there was like a 98% conviction rate, that's statistically impossible.
We hit the same thing where it's like a lot of these problems are both sides overplaying their hand. And it might have been a grave mistake to prosecute people who were not the worst of the worst on January 6th as aggressively as they were, because that might have made Trump's actions maybe more justifiable if you look at them granularly. But I gotta say, like, a lot of what I hear from you is just not how I think people, like, it's not consistent with sort of the brand of MAGA and Trump's own statements himself. And so I guess I'm surprised that you come across as partisan as you do in our content, because when we talk about it, you don't actually seem all that partisan. And it seems like Trump actually is not like a great representation of your views, or I guess the MAGA movement.
I love that man. I think he's funny. I really do. I think.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. I want to play one more quick clip for you, because you shared something I thought that was really good. So you shared kind of a little bit of your own life story, and I want to play you this clip, and then you could tell me more about it.
So stop misinterpreting the genuine claims made by a victim of predicated off of the trauma that they went through. Quite frankly, Lori, I think that is disgusting.
Well, I think it's disgusting because I was a victim of actual rape and abuse. And if you want to compare what happened in the Epstein files, let me just tell you, I was one of those little girls. Okay?
I'm sorry to hear that, Lori.
I was one of those little girls, but the guy was Hugh Hefner. So for you to sit there and say it's disgusting, I'm sorry, I don't agree with the woman as a woman who was abused. I don't agree with the attacks falsely on Donald Trump because of the crap that your side always has to push because you got such bad TDS, it's insane.
So this is obviously,
I wish you guys had changed the lighting in that studio.
I think you look great, and I'm more curious what do you feel comfortable opening up more about, like, the experience? You said you lived in Hugh Hefner's mansion. I mean, how did you find yourself in that context?
Thought about writing a book before, and I think that's why even with the Epstein stuff, I really struggle with how politicized that's become, because everybody wants to make it about Trump. This isn't about Trump. This is a thing that's been going on for decades, and I mean decades, with the powerful. When I was a young girl, I didn't have a very functional home. I grew up in an alcoholic home. By the time I was 12 years old, my tomboy stage, my mom had attempted suicide. She was bipolar.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. After that, I got into trouble. I was a kid. I didn't have attention. My dad was off dating a bunch of women. I started doing drugs. My dad would always kick me out. So therefore, started with OP bikini contest in Huntington Beach. You start getting photographers around you. Then I end up in Hollywood, where he wasn't the only deviant that had young girls at the mansion. I can tell you, because I didn't have anywhere to go. I lived at the Playboy Mansion for a while, and I was 16 years old, 15, 16. From there, I was moved to a place called Gray Hall that was owned by a man named Bernie Kornfeld, who used to own Max Modeling Agency. From there, all I'm trying to say is that happened to me. as a young girl. Luckily,
And I'm
I
sorry
did
it did,
not.
just so
Yeah,
you know.
but the whole QAnon thing was about dropping the Epstein files, and everybody's like, ooh, QAnon. I wasn't fully into it, but I used to look at the post because I was curious, and it was all the Epstein drops. But everybody demonized that until they thought they could connect it with Trump. But I think what people really need to realize, this is going on today. It happened at Nickelodeon. It happened at Disney. One of my abusers, a man by the name of Robert Evans, who produced the movie Chinatown and Cotton Club. He used to be the president of Paramount Studios. This shit is still going on. And Epstein is a little piece of it. Luckily for me, when I was 21 years old, I gave my life to the Lord. I pursued business. I became a very successful businesswoman. I got a family. I've been able to help other victims of trafficking, of those that have been abused. That's why when this border thing happened and all these children started going missing in our country, my heart bled for these kids, because even now, Tim Tebow's got a whole movement going to find these kids. And the online exploitation with the internet now, thank God we didn't have the internet then, is disgusting. And we have hundreds of thousands of children in our country today that need rescuing. So I think where I'm coming from, having lived my past experience, is letting people know Epstein's an inkling of the disgusting, evil, vile abuse that is happening to children all over our country today. And I want to stand to prevent what's happening now, because we can't help what happened 20 years ago.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry that you endured some of those experiences.
Made me a stronger woman.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you made it out, like you're saying, as a very strong person.
Woman leader.
Very strong woman leader. But, Dean played that clip to Shiva in the episode where he talks about like going backstage with women who don't have their clothes on. He's kind of bragging about it. There are accusations against him. I agree with you. Like, nothing's clear cut. You could also make an argument that some of these are not valid. I will guarantee
you right now, at the Miss USA and Miss Universe pageant, because I used to do a lot of fashion shows, there are always men backstage. If you put an AI right now, what's the statistical probability of Trump being backstage alone with women changing? It's 0.
But this is the point I'm making, though, is Trump probably wanted to be like Hugh Hefner in a lot of ways. I mean, they kind of have a similar brand. And so, I mean, don't you worry, though, that like the president is kind of similar to a lot of these men that victimized you? You don't see any rhyme there?
He's a good father. And yeah, when he was a young celebrity, absolutely. I mean, let's be real, John. If you look at rock bands, for instance, let's talk about the grab 'em by the pussy comment. Let's just get that out there. Number one, there's a verb in there that everybody seems to forget. And I think that Trump likes to see, especially when he was younger, liked to come across as the man's, kind of, all these women.
Playboy. Yeah.
But what he had said in that clip was, women let you grab them by the... And what I'm going to say about that is, there's groupies that probably would let him grab them by the pussies. Is that gross? Yeah, it's gross.
But Lori, don't you see how you kind of like are arguing both ways? Because like, I agree with you, like if Tim Tebow's making a documentary that's bringing abuse of children to light, we should celebrate that. But at the same time, if the Me Too movement and feminists are trying to end the cultural trend of men in power having no consequences for putting sexual pressure on their employees or things like that, aren't these all kind of in the same, aren't a lot of these causes on the same team? And doesn't downplaying Trump's behavior when he was younger cut against that like shared goal?
I'll tell you why. I think that people do stupid stuff when they're younger, and people can change over years and over growth. I think Trump is a 8-year-old man now. I didn't vote for a pastor. I think that his past probably was very promiscuous. He had a lot of women around him. He was this celebrity. I do not believe E. Jean Carroll. I will stand strong by that. I know people that worked with her at Simon Schuster. I think that was about the money, and again, more weaponization toward the president. Do I agree with his sexual prowess as a young man? No. But did I vote for who he was 40 years ago? No. I voted to close the border. I voted to stop the trafficking of children. I voted for other things than who he was at 20, if that makes sense. Just like as of now, if I wanted him as a pastor, absolutely not. He would not be my pastor. I think he's an intelligent man. I'm never going to agree with everything that he does. If he does something I don't agree with, I have no problem calling it out. I am not a diehard. Everything he does, I agree with. I think that we're even seeing it now, although this Graham Plattner guy, sorry, I think there's a lot there.
A lot coming up there.
Yeah, but 40 years ago, had Trump been running for office and he was behaving like this, I probably wouldn't have voted for him. As a elderly gentleman who's been married to his wife for 25 years, who actually is very respectful to women when he meets them. When he met me, I've never had a bad conversation with him. It's kind of like, and I hate to say locker room talk, but I get around a lot of guys, and heck, I'll tell you, get around some women sometime in private conversations, and some of the things that I've heard women say, I think would blow your mind. And let's just face it, we're all fallible and we all say stupid things sometimes. But I do not think that President Trump is a sexual abuser. I think he had a lot of women thrown at him, and he took the opportunity as a young celebrity man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you slicing that up for me, because it is complicated, and I agree with you. You know, there's a lot of accusations that are alleged and not proven to be true. So everybody should take any extreme sense of certainty with a lot of salt. And yeah, Lori, this has been really, really interesting.
Really quick, in closing, this is what I want to see. I want to see the things that we agree on. I think that if we really talk about things, we all want what's good for our families. We want housing. Housing's a huge deal. Instead of doing infill, we got a lot of state and federal land. Let's do some infrastructure and build. I think we could all agree on that. Being a native Californian for my whole life, I can tell you this state used to be amazing. It used to be beautiful, and it's not anymore. And we need balance in this state. We need different ideas, but we have to be able to come together to find that middle ground where we can make life better for all of us. And we should all be able to agree on that.
And you live that practice because you show up on Jubilee sets and you do the work of having those conversations. I know this won't be the last Jubilee video you're in. I would encourage you to show more of the nuance you showed me today in the next episode you're in, because I really enjoyed this conversation, because I feel like I got to know you a lot better. And I think a lot of your story and your positions on issues are probably not how I would have assumed they're not what I would have assumed they were, and they're probably not what I think a lot of viewers would have assumed they are either. So thank you for this.
I think when you get two different sides coming into a situation and you're all both already heated and you know you got maybe 2 or 3 minutes to spit it out, it's hard to have that conversation. And honestly, I always wish, pick me for the last 10 minutes so we can actually talk. You know, and I'd love to do that, show you how where it's like the 2-on-2, never been chosen for that. But I think a longer conversation sometimes gets away from the clips and sound bites, so to say.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's hard to get in this algorithmic media space. It's hard to get the most valuable stuff to the top. But thank you so much. This was great.
I enjoyed it.
Sending, good energy towards your husband as he goes through, his health journey. And just wishing you the best. And I'm sure we'll see each other again soon.
Thank you so much for having me on.